Do we have a little bit of this, all of us, or what is this?
Sure. I mean, look, if you look at Helen Fisher's book, she talks about romantic love and how really it's a form of insanity. And that poets have written about this from the beginning of time, that we lose our appetites, we can't sleep, we're checking to see if the person's calling, we talk about them all the time, we idealize them all the time. That is perfectly normal limerence and the act of falling in love. What happens with the love addict, though, is that they get stuck in that phase. They only want that phase. So as soon as they come out of that phase with somebody and they see that person's humanity and their flaws and that they're no longer Prince Charming or the perfect woman, they lose interest in the person. They can't sustain a kind of deeper, closer attachment, bonding, and intimacy with the person that has to do with getting to know them more deeply, tolerating their feelings, seeing that they're not perfect. So as soon as the kind of glaze of the love chemicals fall away, they're done with the relationship. And then they start seeking a new one. Or they stay in the relationship, but they start criticizing the person that they don't love them enough, or it's not the way they used to be, or they're not romantic enough, and their partner can never ever get it right for them. So they'll get into a cycle of, breaking off the relationship and then reuniting, because there's that whole period of, I'm leaving you, and then, oh my God, I miss you so much, I can't live without you, and then there's the makeup sex, right? And so now we're in love again. They cannot stand the breakup, and they will call and call and call and obsess endlessly and try and figure out ways to get back into the person's life. And it can border on stalking if it gets really out of hand, where they're outside the person's house repeatedly, they're checking their voicemails because somehow they got the password, or they're checking their emails because they got those passwords, and they're constantly looking to see, trying to control that other person in hopes that they can control them back in their direction. That's one scenario. Another scenario would be that they don't ever want that person to leave them no matter what, and they will stay at all costs, even if the relationship is abusive. We have a case like that right here, right now, where the guy's just unbelievably abusive, at least in the therapy sessions. We don't know if he's ever hit her or not, but she'll just sit and cry and say that she loves him so much and she can't leave, and she's really more like a hostage. So that's kind of in the domestic violence department. But, you look at this woman and think, why doesn't she just walk away from this? And she will tell you that she loves him and she wants to, fix him. She won't say that, but that's really what's underlying, that if he could just be who she knows he would be, that if she just loves him enough, then maybe he'll change. Well, I think the people that have sort of come from families where there was, say, benign neglect, so they have small traumas in their life, which everybody has if you have a pulse. Your dog died when you were 10, that's a trauma. Your father forgot to pick you up at school when you were 12 and you were there waiting for an hour, that's a trauma. Okay, so nobody really gets hurt in these things, but they're traumatic to our hearts. And if we don't have parents who teach us how to repair them, who don't know how to apologize, who can't sit with us in our feelings, then we're going to create maladaptive ways of being. So we might, at the very lowest level, get into relationships that are more codependent, where we expect other people to make us feel better all the time, and we don't take responsibility for our own feeling states and asking for what we want and need. And at the extreme are the peoples who were, maybe brutalized on some level through some kind of physical abuse or emotional abuse. Those people are going to have much more rapid, cycling examples of feeling elated in love and feeling enraged because they're not getting what they want, or feeling depressed. So the worst case scenario, one that I've not had an experience of with somebody, is that there are crimes of passion that come out of this, where somebody walks in and they find their partner with someone else and somebody shoots somebody and kills them. So it can get destructive in that way, but mostly I think people find it personally destructive because their lives become unmanageable, meaning they're in shambles, they have messes, they're not keeping up with their bills, they're not following through on their commitments with work or completing college educations. They feel like they're treading water and not really getting anywhere. And they will often feel like, I mean, women will report feeling like, I'm the girl that everybody leaves. I don't get to be the one that marches down the aisle and, gets married and has a family. Or I'm the guy that all the women always use. Nobody ever sticks with me. Because they have their own intimacy problems. And that's the reason for that. You can say that in general, love addicts are mostly driven by shame. And in large part, they don't really feel lovable because if somebody comes along that's available, that looks them in the eye, that treats them well, that says, I love you, I think you're beautiful, they recoil from that, they'll push it away, they'll say it's dorky, or it's too, he's not really that sexy, or, he's not my type. Because love addicts will tell you that, they go for the bad boys. And the bad boys are the ones that are emotionally unavailable, or the bad girls that will treat them horribly, because the relationships do become somewhat emotionally abusive because they're not available. And shame is what's driving the whole thing underneath it all. Because if you don't have a shame-based sense of yourself and somebody treats you poorly, on the second or third date, you'll say, I don't want to go out with this person again. I'm not going to be treated that way.
So it's because they're actually putting up with,
Mm-hmm.
they're actually seeking to be treated badly?
Yes, because they're running the patterns in their brain, basically, of what they recognize to be love. Well, avoidant people can kind of drift out of relationships sometimes, so it seems like they're not there because they have a difficulty with proximity. So if they're in close proximity to somebody, they can handle that for a short period of time, or they can be in a relationship with somebody for a long time if there's distance between the two of them. So if they're in a long-term relationship, they can do that for a long time, which suits them just fine. If they're in close proximity with somebody, they can only handle it for a short time, in part because their nervous systems cannot handle that kind of intimacy, that kind of close eye contact, that kind of affection and touching. They'll feel smothered, they'll feel like it's too much, like they're crawling out of their skin. They'll say things like that about it. So the brain actually needs oxygen. And if someone who's avoidant feels like they're being impinged upon too much, they're not getting enough oxygen in the brain to stay in the relationship, and so they will dissociate. So the partner just has to know this, that they're with somebody that they love, who can be loving in short bursts maybe initially, and over time that person can build a capacity to stay in closer. They'll be more resilient. Oftentimes if they have a child, that changes them pretty dramatically. Men's nervous systems change when they have babies. Just the act of holding the baby starts to change their autonomic nervous systems. We are seeking what we know, basically. We will replicate our family of origin over and over and over again, sometimes in compulsive ways, in order to repair what we didn't get to begin with. And unless we embark on a path of self-awareness and go through our own healing, we won't attract somebody who is able to meet us equally and treat us the way we want to be treated.